All right, y'all. I know. It's been a minute. Life got loud, but trust me, when I say this, today's episode, it had to simmer a little bit. Because we're not coming back soft. We're diving headfirst into one of the ugliest lies in America right now. And if you're a teacher, if you're a parent, if you even care about a kid who sat in a public school desk, you probably heard this too. Teachers are the problem. And that's the lie. Not, but they're not going to blame the not. It's not the underfunded buildings, not the overcrowded classrooms, not the politicians who've gutted the system year after year. Nope. The problem, according to headlines and hashtags, is that people still showing up every morning, lesson plans in hand, trying to keep the damn lights on. Let me break this down. I've taught in those classrooms, and I keep teaching. I've seen teachers buy supplies out of their own pockets while getting called indoctrinators by people who wouldn't last a single week in our shoes. I've sat in staff meetings where the main discussion wasn't curriculum, but how to protect our students from active shooters, while lawmakers tell us we are quote unquote too soft. And meanwhile, what's really going on? School boards are banning books, governors are signing bills that strip away our ability to speak truth. And every election season, teachers become the easiest political punching bag, all while the people slashing budgets pretend they care about literacy and graduation rates. This is not new, but it's getting worse. And here's what's wild. There was a time when teaching was seen as a noble profession. There was a time when people trusted educators more than they trusted politicians. There was a time when parents and teachers were on the same team. But that was before the cultural wars, before the test score obsession, before people in power realized they could score political points by tearing down public schools and blaming the collapse on the very people trying to save them. And let me be real with y'all. This is sabotage, deliberate, systemic, profitable. Because public education is the last place where working class people still have a voice, still have some say in what their kids learn, what values get taught, what kind of future they might have. And that scares the hell out of people who want full control. So they chip away at the foundation, they defund it, they disrespect it, they demonize the people inside it. And when it all starts to crack, they shrug and say, well, guess we need more charter schools, guess we need private vouchers, guess we should get government out of the education altogether. In this case, more government involvement. That is in the wrong way. We're not playing that game. Because I've seen too many good teachers walk away from jobs they love because the system beat them down. I've seen students suffer because their district couldn't hold on to qualified staff, and I've seen how fast the blame shifts when the people in power don't want to take responsibility for their own decisions. So today, we're going to talk about that. We're talking about the pay, the politics, the propaganda, and how this country is failing its educators on purpose. So let's get into it. So let's get something straight from the jump. Teachers aren't quitting because they're lazy. They're not quitting because the job got too hard after COVID. They're quitting because we built a system designed to push them out. And then we have the nerve to pretend like it's a mystery. And this is not a workforce shortage. It's a system failure. Actually, scratch that. It's a planned failure. Now, if you think I'm exaggerating, sit tight because the numbers don't lie. In just 1 month, in June of 2023, over 51,000 teachers and school staff resigned. That's the highest single month total since the pandemic started. And that's just the people who officially left. A bigger group, the ones who are still hanging on, are barely hanging on. It's like a recent NEA survey said 78% of teachers have seriously thought about quitting since COVID. Not had a bad day, not feeling overwhelmed, like seriously considering walking away for good. And nearly 44% said they feel burned out, very often or always. That's the highest rate of burnout in any profession, 44%. Higher than doctors, higher than cops, higher than the retail workers getting screamed at for enforcing return policies. So what's happening here? What's driving that level of exhaustion, that kind of hopelessness? Let's start with something nobody ever wants to talk about when it comes to education: money. So the national average teacher salary is about $72,000 right now. Now here's the thing. That sounds really nice, actually. That sounds very decent. But the averages are sneaky. That number is bloated by states like California, Massachusetts, and DC, where teachers do make more, but it's a different cost of living. But if you teach in Oklahoma, Mississippi, or Arkansas, you're lucky if you clear $32,000 a year. And let me give you some real numbers from the 2024-2025 school year. Let's go with DC. Starting salary, $63,373. New Jersey, $57,603. Utah, $55,000. Texas, $48,526. Florida, $48,639. Mississippi, here it goes, $42,492. Oklahoma, $41,152. And that's before taxes, before insurance, before the schools ask you to buy your own printer paper. And the national average starting salary is just $46,526. That is a 4.4 raise from last year, but still nowhere near enough to live comfortably in most cities, pretty much anywhere. I mean, think about we're asking teachers to do. Like, we're college graduates, trained professionals, mentors, life coaches, counselors, to work a full time for $42,000 and then go to Walmart on Saturday to spend our own money on pencils and glue sticks. Like, I've lived this. I've watched coworkers cry in their cars during lunch. I've seen teachers working second jobs or third jobs, tutoring after hours, coaching sports just to make rent. And every time we speak about it, someone on the news says, "Well, teachers knew what they were signing up for. They need to remember their why." But yeah, we signed up to teach, not to go broke doing it. We didn't sign up for overcrowded classrooms, underfunded schools, endless standardized tests, and politicians blaming us for every social issue they refuse to solve. And here's the thing that people outside education really don't get. The money's just part of the story. That's just a small percentage. This is bigger than salaries. This is about the respect. It's about the power. And this is about who gets to define success in America and who gets scapegoated when it falls apart. You want to talk about inflation? Teacher pay, adjusted for inflation, has dropped in a majority of states over the past decade. Teachers today earn, on average, only 76 cents for every dollar earned by a professional with similar education levels. That's not just a pay gap, that's a value gap. That's the country saying, "We'll clap for you on TikTok, but don't expect us to actually invest in you." It's performative appreciation with zero structural change. And it makes me angry too, because we see these stories about, this teacher who had cancer, but he was still grading papers. Like, and we praise that teacher. That's not something we should be praising, because that a man was dying through cancer, but apparently the school was so shorthanded that the guy needed to grade papers during his chemotherapy. Now let's talk about the future of the profession, because here's where it gets scary. Do you know how many people are signing up to become teachers now? Half as many as they were in the 1970s. That's not a typo. Enrollment in teacher prep programs have dropped by over 50%. And it's not hard to figure out why. I've seen many teacher programs being cut for universities. No one wants to sign up. Like, why would someone take on a student debt to get a degree in education just to earn less than someone working in HR or tech support? To be micromanaged, underpaid, and blamed when a kid doesn't pass a state test written by someone who's never stepped foot in a classroom? Like, districts across the country are now desperate. Like, we're talking over 55,000 teachers vacancies nationwide, and 270,000 positions filled by people without proper credentials. You heard that right. There are 270,000 classrooms right now being led by someone who doesn't have the qualifications we used to require, because we are that short-handed. And that's not a system crisis. That's a systems collapsing in real time. And like, give you a little bit of my experience. I'm a standard certified teacher. I went to college to be a music educator, and I passed all my certifications. and I am considered a like a weird, a random thing, not a random, um, just not usual anymore to have all these certifications. I'm coveted, so this is not a problem with it. Like the, it's ridiculous how what we're doing to our education systems. But let me be clear. Let me be clear again. Like teachers are not quitting the kids. They're quitting in a profession that's been strangled by bureaucracy, politics, and decades of disinvestment. You defund the schools, you freeze the wages, you slash pensions, you micromanage the teachers, you ban books, you censor history, you pile on tests and strip away support. And then when people walk away, you call it a crisis in education. No, that's not a crisis. It's the consequence. It's what happens when you build a house, light it on fire, and then blame the firefighters for not saving it fast enough. It isn't a burnout. It's an arson. We're not witnessing teacher failure. We're witnessing political abandonment. And if we don't fix it soon, if we keep letting lawmakers treat schools like a battleground and teachers like the pawns, then the kids will suffer. And they are suffering. Not because we, the teachers, failed them, but because this country did. Like, teachers are tired. They're grieving. They're angry. And they're leaving not because they stopped caring, but because the system stopped caring about them, us. And until we stop blaming teachers for the conditions they didn't create, nothing is going to change. Not the scores, not the outcomes, not the future. That's the truth. And if that truth makes folks uncomfortable, maybe it should. Because the lie we're living in, that's what actually is hurting our kids. So the last segment, we broke down how teachers are leaving not just because of low pay, but because they're being burned out, set on fire by a system that treats them like disposable labor. But today we dig into what's pouring gasoline on that fire. And of course it's politics, because why not? And it's always the answer to everything, politics. And I'm not talking about like debates in the teacher's lounge. I'm talking about lawmakers, mostly on the right, turning classrooms into battlefields. Because politics isn't just knocking at the classroom door anymore. It's kicking in, breaking windows, ripping pages out of textbooks, and telling teachers entirely either comply or get out. Let's start with the gag laws. Let's start with the wave of gag laws sweeping the country. Between 2021 and now, we've seen dozens of bills pass, restricting how teachers can talk about race, gender, sexuality, even American history. In 2025 alone, 18 states now have explicit bans on so-called divisive concepts, a phrase that basically means anything that makes white parents uncomfortable. Another 44 states have introduced bills or policies restricting how educators can approach these topics. Some of these laws ban teaching about systemic racism. Others prohibit discussing LGBTQ plus identity. Some go as far as punishing teachers for sharing any material that hasn't been cleared by vague, politically appointed review boards. And this isn't just a hypothetical stuff that sits on the books and gets ignored. These laws come with teeth. They revoke certifications, budget penalties for districts, investigations, lawsuits, and in some states, criminal charges. Let's bring it home to where I teach. In Oklahoma, where I teach, there's an House Bill 1775. Of course it is. This law bans educators from teaching anything that might imply, and I quote, an individual is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, even if we're talking about historical facts. What's that mean in real life? It means high school teachers could be disciplined or fired for teaching about redlining. It means that an implicit bias training for faculty led to an entire district's accreditation being threatened. It means I had to ask myself if a lesson about protest music during the civil rights era might be misinterpreted as political indoctrination. And it's not just Oklahoma. In Texas, they passed the Senate Bill 13, which allows local moral review committees. That's the real phrase, to ban library books, not just new books. We're talking about classics like The Odyssey and Huckleberry Finn, anything with controversial themes, and it's now fair game for censorship. And as of May 2025, they passed the Senate Bill 10, requiring every public school classroom to display the 10 Commandments. That's not education. That's theocracy. That is indoctrination. Like, we've gone from critical thinking to state enforced religion, the thing that the founding fathers were against. Now let's go to the other one. According to a 2024 report by PEN America, 56 gag order bills were introduced just that year. In 2024, only 56, and 7 were passed. Educators across the country are reporting self-censorship, curriculum confusion, fear of being sued, avoiding books or lessons altogether. Because now, you don't even need to break the law to get in trouble. It all it takes is one angry parent, one viral video, or one misinterpreted sentence, and your job, your license, and your reputation are on the line. And like, teachers are walking around like they're stepping on landmines. You can't teach like that. And the effects go deep. Texas, Florida, Oklahoma, they're seeing the start of the brain drain. That the talented, qualified teachers are leaving the state or the profession altogether. They'd rather flip burgers or work retail than stand in a room where truth is illegal. Now let's do a gut check. If you're a teacher, you just finished a unit of American slavery, Jim Crow laws, and civil rights. Next week, you get an email that your lesson plan might violate state law. Suddenly, you're questioning everything. Next semester, you're required to display the 10 Commandments in your classroom, regardless of your own beliefs or your students' faiths. That's not education. This is political theater every time. That's curriculum by culture war. This profession used to be inspiring critical thinkers. Now it's about navigating landmines set by people who have never taught a day in their life, and also led by families who have no idea what they're talking about because they saw on Fox News that apparently there's kitty litter in Nebraska, which has been debunked thousands of times, but they keep yelling about it, and they saying that there's indoctrination going on because some idiot from Fox News told them that there was indoctrination. Like, let's bring in some real voices. Like, here's a quote from a teacher in Oklahoma, and I quote, "I cancel a lesson on implicit bias because House Bill 1775 terrifies me. One email complaint and I'm under investigation." Here's one from Texas librarian. "SB 13 gives neighborhood bussy buddies control over which books I'm allowed to teach. I had 3 books removed from my shelves this year, including one about Rosa Parks." Like, let that sink in. A book about Rosa Parks. A lesson on bias. Both seen as threats in 2025. Now, take all of that, what I just said. The fear, the censorship, the surveillance, the 1984 crap going on. And layer on top of what we talked about in segment 1. Crippling burnout, stagnant pay, lack of support, violent threats from outside agitators, constant political scrutiny. And what do you get? A profession people are fleeing from. As of fall 2024, 35% of teachers say they're very likely to leave within 2 years. There are 55,000 unfilled teaching positions nationwide. 270,000 classrooms are staffed by people who don't meet standard qualifications. We're filling vacancies with warm bodies, not trained professionals, and the people who suffer the most, the students. Listen, I have no beef with people who want to come in and teach, but they don't have the quote unquote traditional certifications. If they're doing it for the good of their hearts and they know they could have teach, good for them. However, this is a problem because there's not many of those people. They're just warm bodies. And this is not an accident. This isn't just concerned parents and spirit debate. This is a coordinated political strategy. 1. Defund schools and underpay teachers. 2. Blame the collapse on woke educators. 3. Pass laws to silence honest teaching. 4. Scare the remaining teachers into silence or resignation. 5. Open the door for private school charters or voucher programs funded by public money. Your money funding private schools. Or funding religious schools. That's not what the Constitution was about, and this is the problem with separation of church and state. So here's the truth. Schools aren't crumbling because teachers lost their ways. They're collapsing because politicians pushed them out and silenced them while they were at it. This is the profession in decline. It's a system being dismantled on purpose. And unless we fight for it, loudly, publicly, unapologetically, we're going to lose something that used to be sacred in this country: the right to teach the truth. So now we're gonna go follow the money, because why not? This whole podcast has been about politics and money, because that's where this country is going for. We're gonna talk about vouchers, charters, corporations, and the same lawmakers who helped gut the system in the first place, and see what they did. Stick around, because this is just getting better. Alright, so let's stop pretending this is just about budgets or learning outcomes. Because once you've defunded the schools, once you've burned out the teachers, and once you've flooded the classroom with gag orders, surveillance, and chaos, what comes next? Privatization. We have charters, vouchers, for-profit curriculum companies, state contracts going to friends and donors, billion-dollar grifts dressed up as school choice. This isn't an accident, it's a business model. And we're all footing the bill. It's always a business model. Like, it never stops. Let's start with charters. Now, some folks will still believe charters are just a quote-unquote innovative alternatives to public schools. But let's be clear, we are past that debate. As of 2025, the US charter school industry is worth nearly $50 billion. That's not a passion project, that's a Wall Street scale. And while public schools have lost over 1.3 million students since the pandemic, mostly due to budget cuts and enrollment declines, charter schools saw a 12% enrollment increase between 2019 and 2024. Well, what makes this dangerous isn't just the numbers, it's the infrastructure behind it. We're talking hedge funds-backed networks, real estate developers flipping school buildings for profit, and corporate-backed foundations funneling millions into lobbying for pro-charter legislation, all while public schools fight just to afford working air conditioners. Charters often cherry-pick students, under-enrolled kids with disabilities, and operate without the accountability traditional public schools are subject to. And when they fail, which many do, there's no community meeting. They just close. You probably have heard it. You remember Kanye West's little charter school? Closed out of nowhere. A lot of charter schools in Florida, they just close. No, nothing to the parents, just close. What happens to those kids? Gotta go to some school somehow. Then we have the vouchers. The words sound harmless enough. School choice, parental rights, all that PR tested language. But let's be real. Vouchers are a direct pipeline taking money out of public schools and giving it to a private or religious institution. Since 2021, we've gone from 0 universal voucher programs to over 13 statewide universal ESA or voucher systems, and over 30 states with active voucher legislation. Texas just passed a $1 billion universal voucher bill. Every single student, all 5.3 million of K-12 kids, they're eligible for this. That's a massive public funds transfer into private hands. Same in Florida, Arkansas, Indiana, Oklahoma, Alabama, Iowa, and North Carolina. Name a red state, they're going for this. But here's the scam. Most vouchers users weren't even in public schools to begin with. In Florida, a study found that only 13% of new voucher users came from public schools. The rest, already in private school, some from families making over $120,000 a year. So instead of helping low-income families access to new opportunities, we're subsidizing tuition for the wealthy. Well, the public schools in working-class neighborhoods fall apart. Shocking, because that's just how it works. And you know who doesn't get picked up by this choice system? And let's go, because it's obvious. This happens all the time, but they don't want to. People want to turn a blind eye because of test scores. But people who get declined by these schools are the following: kids with disabilities, English language learners, LGBTQ youth, students with behavioral challenges, rural kids with no nearby alternatives. Public schools take everyone. Charter and private schools, not so much. And as the public schools lose enrollment, they lose funding. As they lose funding, they lose teachers. And as they lose teachers, test scores and support service drop. And guess what happens next? Politicians point at them and say, "See, public schools are failing." It's a manufactured failure. It's like slashing someone's tires and then blaming them for not getting to work on time. Now, let's go with the political part. Let's talk power. These vouchers and charter schemes aren't grassroots movements. They're top-down campaigns funded by billionaires and political think tanks who want education privatized like healthcare and prisons. Groups like the American Federation for Children, funded by Betsy DeVos, oh man, from the Heritage Foundation, she is a gem. Or the ALEC, ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, writing copy-paste legislation that shows up in red states after red state. They flood local elections with dark money. They push school board takeovers, and they brand teachers in public schools as enemies of freedom to justify the gutting of what's left. They're not fighting for your child's future. They're fighting for market share. Now, then there's the oversight. You know that all this privatization conveniently lacks accountability. Because here's what happens. This is what public school reports do. Like public school reports to school boards, state officials, district budgets, audits, parent councils. That's 5 sets of eyes right there for a public school. Private and charter schools using vouchers, many aren't required to administer standardized tests, disclose spending, hire certified teachers, follow anti-discrimination laws, and provide IEP services. Like, seriously? Like, no one sees a problem with this. And then in Arizona, a state auditor found the parents use ESA funds meant for educational use to buy kayaks, PlayStations, and flat screen TVs. And there was no mechanism to stop it. In South Carolina, nearly 1,000 ineligible students were approved for $1,500 vouchers last year. Money gone, no consequences. Imagine that happening in a public school. It'd be a scandal on Fox News for weeks. But because this happened to a voucher or private school, and most likely mainly wealthy white suburban people, it was just a mistake. Nothing to report here. And this is where we are now. Education isn't being treated like a right. It's being treated like a marketplace, a product, a profit stream, another industry to privatize, slice up, and sell to the higher bidder. And in that system, kids become customers. And teachers, they're just line items. If you think this is about freedom, ask yourself this. Freedom for who? Because it's not freedom for the parent whose rural schools close after vouchers drain its funding. It's not freedom for the LGBTQ teen kicked out of a private school. And it's not freedom for the special ed student denied services because the voucher school didn't have capacity. It's only freedom for those already holding the power. And the checkbook, of course. So when they say choice, remember this. It's not about your choice. It's about their control. And they starved the system, blame educators, wrote the rules, and now they're cashing in on the collapse they created. But not everybody's going quietly. Because in the next segment, we'll talk resistance. From teachers organizing walkouts, to parents fighting back at the ballot box, to entire towns voting to reinvest in public schools. We'll show you how the system can be saved. Because this isn't over. We talk about the collapse, the burnout, and the political firestorm. We talk through the privatization pipeline, how they go to public schools and sold off by pieces. Now let's flip it, because here's the part that they don't want you to know. People are fighting back, and in more places than you expect. This isn't just activism in big cities or teacher strikes in liberal states. This is parents in rural towns organizing budget votes. It's educators in red states walking out. It's students testifying to school boards telling the truth that adults are too afraid to say. So let's talk about the movements that are rising. We all remember the Red for Ed movement, but it didn't die in 2018. It evolved. Across the country, educators are using the most powerful tool, collective action. Let's start in Arizona. Teachers walked out for more than 1,000 schools demanding higher pay and smaller class sizes. They shut down the system for 6 days and won a 20% raise phase in over 3 years. Now let's go in West Virginia. The entire state public education system shut down. every single county when teachers demanded better health insurance and fair compensation. Not only did they win, they sparked a wave across Kentucky, Oklahoma, Colorado, and more. Now let's go to Oklahoma. The same wave led to the first teacher pay raise in a decade. How? Teachers walked out for 9 days, flooded the Capitol, and forced the lawmakers to vote live and on the record. Even though, I mean, it worked, but in Oklahoma we're still the lowest salaries. But it was way lower before, so trust me, it was really bad, guys. And these weren't stunts. They were organized power plays, and they worked. A Brookings study found that states where teachers walked out saw greater gains in education funding and stronger public support for public schools the year after. Now, the resistance isn't just in the streets. It's also in the ballot box. After years of being targeted by extremist PACs and culture war candidates, communities are taking back their school boards. In Wisconsin, Progressive Teacher and Parent Coalition flipped conservative boards in places like Waukesha and Eau Claire, stopping book bans and restoring mental health supports. In Pennsylvania, a slate of pro-public education candidates won school board seats in Bucks County, defeating anti-LGBTQ+ and anti-CRT candidates backed by millions in out-of-state funding. In Texas, parents in Round Rock and Northside ISDs showed up en masse to challenge book bans and publicize conflicts of interest tied to vouchers advocates sitting on the board. These aren't just symbolic wins, they're structural defenses. Because when you control the board, you control the budget, you control the curriculum, you decide whether schools are silenced or supported. Now, let's go to the other one. And teachers aren't just protesting, they are testifying. In April 2025, a coalition of over 60 educators from across Texas traveled to Austin to speak directly to lawmakers about the harm of school vouchers. They shared stories, students losing access to support services, school with 40 plus students per classroom, and the chilling effect of censorship like the SB 13. And these weren't just symbolic pleas, they were counterweight to the coordinated lobbyists from pro-privatization groups like Americans for Prosperity and the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Educators are showing up, and the narrative is shifting. Even in states with voucher laws are already passed, like Florida and Arizona, teachers are pressuring for oversight and reform. They're not just saying no, they're saying not like this. Meanwhile, the legal system is becoming a frontline too. In Ohio, a court just ruled that the state's EdChoice voucher program, one of the oldest in the nation, is unconstitutional. Why? Because it violated the state's duty to provide a thorough and efficient system of common schools. This is huge because the court said what so many of us already knew. You cannot fund a two-tier system with the same pot and pretend it's fair. In other states, lawsuits are being filed against censorship laws like House Bill 1775 in Oklahoma, House Bill 7 in Florida, arguing they violate the First Amendment and restrict academic freedom. Meanwhile, in Illinois, Connecticut, and New Mexico, state legislators are introducing bills to ban public funding for private school vouchers entirely and protect teacher autonomy. So yes, the courts and capitals aren't just rubber stamping privatizations anymore. Now let's not forget everyday people doing the work. In New Haven, a group of black parents organized around the planned closure of a neighborhood school. Their collective action delayed the closure, forced a reevaluation, and brought community voice back to the table. In San Francisco, students at Mission High School protested in a proposed library staffing cut by holding a reading, filling the halls with books and demanding support. They went viral and the position was safe. In rural Arkansas, a parent-led coalition helped defeat a proposed voucher expansion bill by organizing town halls, knocking on doors, and presenting economic data showing the harm to local schools. This is what democracy looks like: messy, emotional, grassroots, and powerful. Now, look, none of this is easy. The system wasn't built for teachers to win, but you can feel the shift. A few years ago, folks were asking, where are the teachers? Now they're asking, How do we join them? In red states, unions are growing despite the right to work laws. In blue states, funding referendums are passing with record support. And across the country, more teachers, parents, and students are running for office, from school boards to state legislatures. This is more than defense. This is reclaiming our school systems. They tried to gut our schools, fire teachers, silence our stories, and sell the whole thing off. But what they didn't count on was that we're still counting this, that we're still here and we're done being quiet. Like, this isn't a lost cause. This is our cause. And now that we are awake, we're not going back to sleep. Now, like, we're going to go to the next the last segment of this. We're laying our real policy proposals, organizing strategies, and what you can do right now to rebuild public education by the people, for the people. Because the fight isn't over. It's just getting started. All right, so if you made it this far, you already know. Our public education system isn't broken by accident. It's been undermined by design. But here's the part that they don't expect. We're not just exposing the problem, we're building the solution. So this segment, it's about strategy. It's about what we can do locally, statewide, nationally to take public schools back from those trying to sell them off piece by piece. And it starts with policy. And let's stop sugarcoating it. Teachers are underpaid and overworked. One of the solutions, pay competitive across the board. The average teacher still earns 24% less than similarly educated professionals. And in states like Oklahoma and Mississippi, starting pay is below $42,000. We fixed that by passing laws that tie salaries to inflation and regional living costs, just like we do for public safety officers and government workers. 2. Student debt relief. We need national expansion of programs like the Teacher Loan Forgiveness Program, but with more reach. Loan forgiveness should kick in after 5 to 7 years for those working in high-need schools, especially Title I districts. 3. Retention bonuses and mentoring. Models like the TAP system in Tennessee and teacher incentive allotments in Texas offer stipends, bonuses, and structured mentorship for new and mid-career teachers. When done right, these programs improve both retention and student outcomes. Now, let's go with the funding schools. 4. Overhaul the outdated funding formulas. We can't keep relying on property taxes to fund schools. That's how we get $12,000 per pupil in one district and $4,000 in another down the road. The model, states like Ohio and Connecticut have begun replacing property-based funding with needs-based funding that accounts for student poverty levels, language needs, and district cost of living. 5. Dedicated special education and ELL funding. Too many schools are robbing general education budgets to fund IEPs and ESL services. We need federal mandates that increases IDEA funding to at least 40% of the cost, the original commitment made in 1975. That's not luxury, that's just justice. Then we go to we need to protect the profession. 6, here's my 6th point. Repealed gag laws and censorship mandates. Laws like the HB 1775 in Oklahoma or SB 13 in Texas do more than ban content. They ban critical thinking. We need to pass teacher protection acts at the state level that reaffirms the right to teach honest history, diverse literature, and real science without political interference. 7. Reinvest in prep programs. Since 2010, enrollment in teacher training programs have dropped by over 35% nationally. We fixed that by offering tuition grants for future teachers, paid year-long residence in high-need schools, and guaranteed job placements after graduation. That's how you rebuild the pipeline, with people who are prepared and supported. Then we go with the end of privatization, like 8, cap voucher and charter school expansion. States like Pennsylvania are pushing legislation to cap cyber charter payments and enforce transparent budgets. Every charter or voucher recipient should have to hire certified teachers, administer public assessment, and report publicly how dollars are spent. If you're taking public money, you you play by the public rules. 9. Audit voucher usages. In Arizona, parents use ESA funds on kayaks and PlayStations. In South Carolina, nearly 1,000 ineligible students got checks. We need independent audits and strict eligibility reviews to stop fraud before it happens. 10. And the last one, no public dollars for discrimination. Private schools that take vouchers but deny LGBTQ students or anybody of different faiths, or deny special ed accommodations shouldn't get a dime. Period. I don't care about this. That's a private school. I don't care. The moment it says school on it, they have to have the same rules that the federal law says. Every kid deserves an education. If they're paying for it, they deserve the same education as everybody else. So, what can the communities do right now? This isn't just a top-down fight. Local action is power. You can run for a school board. If you're a parent, teacher, or just someone who cares, take a seat at the table. If you're so yelling about parent rights, this is the time to act. You gotta vote in local referendum. School funding votes are often decided by single-digit margins, so you need to show up. Organize with others, whether it's PTA, a union, or a town hall. Nothing beats a room full of informed people who aren't afraid to speak up. Share your stories. If you're a teacher, speak honestly. If you're a parent, listen to the people in those classrooms every day. And if you're a student, don't wait to be invited. This is your future. You already have a voice. Use it. And then I want to end this segment with something real. Not stats, not policy, just the truth. I've worn a few uniforms in my life. I stood in front of students in public schools where the roof leaks and the copy paper is rationed. And I've worn the uniform of a Marine in places where you follow orders and trust the mission. But here's what I know now. The mission isn't over there. It's right here. It's in our schools. It's in our students. It's in every classroom where a kid is told they're worth less because their zip code doesn't fund them right. And I didn't serve this country just to watch them abandon the very people who keep it going. Teachers, kids, cafeteria, staff, bus drivers, aides. I started this because I'm tired of the lies. I'm tired of watching people who've never taught in a day in their life make decisions that devastate entire communities. We need to stop asking, when will someone save education? And start saying, we will. Because no one is coming to fix it for us. We are the plan. So, before we close out this episode, I want to speak from where I see things. Not from the headlines, and not from reports, but from my own classrooms, my own hallways, in my own life, my own lived reality. Because I've seen what the system does to people. I've seen bright, committed teachers show up with fresh lesson plans, energy, ideas, and they walk out before the first week is over. They even last a month or a semester, they walk out. And not because they didn't care, but because they were thrown into chaos with no support, no mentorship, and no backup from the people who were supposed to lead them. They asked for help and got policy handbooks. They asked for planning time and got lunch duty or morning duty, whatever duty you want to add. They burned out and we called it a staffing issue. I've seen whole departments shrink into a shell. One teacher running 3 subjects. I've seen classrooms sit empty while subs rotate in and out like a revolving door. This isn't sustainable, and we shouldn't pretend it is. And I've seen the heartbreak in kids' eye when their favorite teacher just stops showing up. I've seen students walk out too, not just from the class, but from the public school system altogether. They leave for a voucher program or some charter promise, and sometimes they don't come back. And when they do come back, they are way behind. They've lost time, lost connection, lost confidence, and probably in most of the material is not up to date, or they weren't learning anything in these schools because those programs were made for them. They were made for the kids who don't need special ed plans, or they have the money for this. They who don't need meals, who don't need help navigating trauma or translation of or learning differences. And the kids who stay behind, they start asking why they are the ones left in the building with no AC, no working smart board, no consistent adult in the room. They start to think maybe they matter less. That's the part that keeps me up. And and to the parents, I need to say this with love and respect. We need you in this fight. We need your voice, your support, and your presence. But we also need your trust. Teachers are not trying to indoctrinate your kids. We're not pushing agendas. We're not trying to turn them against you. We're just trying to help them think critically, like an adult, to pass the test, to finish the work, to make it to graduation. We're trying to give them a shot at adulthood with the tools they need to survive and thrive. So yes, ask questions, be involved, be loud when budgets get cut or teachers get silenced. But please, stop assuming that classrooms are battlegrounds for political agendas. Because most of us are just trying to get through the day without a copier jamming, or a fight in the hallway, or a student crying because they can't afford a field trip, or they can't afford lights at their house. Then they don't have food or anything like that. Let us teach. Let us do what we train years to do. We are your partners, not your enemies. And then I didn't serve this country to watch it abandon the very people who hold it together. And I didn't walk into a classroom thinking I have to fight this hard to be allowed to care. But I do, because I've seen too many good teachers forced out. I've seen too many kids written off. And I've seen too many communities convinced that public education is broken beyond repair, when the truth is, it's been broken on purpose. And the only way it stops is if we stop it together. So please, help us. Don't believe this crap that is going indoctrination or CRT. Listen, we are just trying to get these kids to pass it through high school in the broken system that we were given. We are following the curriculum given by our state superintendent. And sometimes that we disagree with that curriculum because it's not teaching them the truth. So we're putting our professions in the line. So please, parents or whatever, students, help us. Don't just be putting all these talking points that the Fox News, Newmax, or whatever stupid right conservative party wants to throw out there, because their end goal for you is to pull out your kid from public school and send them to private or voucher schools so they can take away our public education and make it into a privatized education, and they can make money out of it. They don't care about your child. They don't care what you believe in. They don't care about anything. They just care about money. Us teachers, we care about you. We care about the students. We care about what they can become. It hurts when we see them suffer. It hurts us when we see them struggle. It hurts us when we're trying to grade something and all of a sudden we hear the news that maybe one of our students got shot and killed. It hurts to us also when, or it hurts us when they're hungry, all that stuff. We're not trying to be, we're trying to help you. So stop using these talking points. Again, that's it. I'm just another day, right? I'm just going to say public schools are worth saving. Teachers are worth supporting. And the kids, they're worth everything. Again, thank you for listening. I'll see you next time.